Hello folks, Anahita Rao here. Now, I wanted to talk about something today which is basically a talk that's inspired by a couple of questions I had. So now, to those who have been following the planetary transit, you must be aware that all the planets are placed in dignity for the majority of 2020. So then a valid question may arise in your mind, and that is, with the planets so well placed, how can the COVID-19 pandemic happen now? So let's discuss this. But before I do, to those who comment and have subscribed, a big thanks. And to the rest, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the right-hand side. Thank you, folks. Now, isn't it contradictory to suggest that the planets are so well placed, and yet we're facing this pandemic now? Well, the first point is this. This is kind of the fundamental basis of examining what we're experiencing right now. And that is that Earth is not only for human beings. We do not own the planet Earth, despite us creating laws to dig, build, and encroach on this space that we inhabit for a very transient and temporary period of time. Yeah? We don't have authority over the environment, despite what we think, and again, despite what the laws tell us. Other living beings are not created for our pleasure only, i.e. to consume or to exploit. And finally, when we speak about planetary movements, the first thing to keep in mind is that we're talking about what is in the sky. In Vedic astrology, the planets and the sky itself are considered our higher nature. In short, our divinity. The nature of all life on this planet is strongly imprinted with the qualities of the solar system. The Earth, the Sun, and the Moon are very influential. The Earth and our lives are deeply connected with them. Since the onset of this pandemic we find ourselves in due to the spread of COVID-19 virus, we're seeing something that some of us have never witnessed before. All of a sudden, the human footprint on Earth has lightened substantially. There was reduction in air traffic, there was reduction in road traffic. In some places, it's come to a complete halt. Coyotes, usually scared of traffic, have been spotted on the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. Deers are grazing near homes a few miles from the White House. Wild boar are becoming bolder in Spain and Italy. In Wales, peacocks are strutting through the streets. Goats and sheep have been filmed on roundabouts in English countrysides. There have been seals spotted on the streets of Singapore, and dolphins near Marine Drive in Mumbai. So we talk about planets being in good dignity, and we then see such a stark contrast with what is going on in our lives as human beings. Disease and death has wreaked havoc in our lives, forcing us into social isolation, frustrations with work and finances, and has stunted our movement completely. So this seems to be a contradiction. But in fact, the contradiction is within the human mind, because we have come so far away from nature and even our own nature. We become so disconnected with our environment and view other living beings for our consumption and enjoyment. On one hand, encroaching on their space, and in the other extreme, torturing and caging them for our consumption. This is a very deep and destructive disconnect with nature. And now we're witnessing something so peculiar. Nature can finally breathe, whilst we're forced to stay indoors, contemplating and re-engineering our lives. And indeed, we will be forced to re-engineer our lives Some will do it out of fear, and others will do so out of necessity. Let's go back to the astrology, because that's kind of the core of this talk today, yeah? Now, astrology's real purpose is to connect us to that space, that divinity. And if we're disconnected from our own nature, then we're also disconnected from the planetary movements. So how can we possibly talk about Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, the planets which are way beyond the human eye can see, when you have no intrinsic connection to the immediate environment which you can see, or for that matter, other living beings which you share the planet with? In fact, this is the reason astrology has become merely an intellectual discussion nowadays. Who has the longest talk on YouTube on the most complex and intricate aspects of Jyotish, for example? Well, let's see. That must be the best astrologer, the most knowledgeable one too. Astrology is not designed merely for the intellect. Whilst it does require logic and analysis, of course, it's not intrinsically an intellectual subject. Yeah? Divine knowledge is something that goes much deeper than that and needs to be understood from that level of depth, from the soul and from the spirit. So a daily dose of don't do this or don't do that because this planet won't support you, or you will get blocked because you're in a Saturn period or a Ketu period, is not really the essence of astrology. But unfortunately, this type of astrology tends to be popular because it provides the mind with food for thought. Again, we're talking about thoughts, exercise for the intellect. If you rely too much on this, you'll always be listening to where Saturn is with respect to your moon, or where Mars is transiting with respect to your lagna, and you'll shape your life accordingly. You'll also become constantly filled with fears and doubts. You'll then also increase your dependence on those astrologers who are keen to give you a regular forecast on where Mars is going next, or Venus, or Mercury, and how it impacts your ascendant. This is the biggest trap of astrology. Instead, if you're not connected to your inner self, if you don't take time to reflect, to introspect, to meditate, for example, to do yoga, pranayama, or have a regular spiritual practice, you will stay in this trap. If you don't invest time on a good diet, enough rest, and eliminate the unnecessary in your life and in your space, spend time with nature, respect nature and other living beings, you'll be stuck in this place. And unfortunately, in this place, there's really no understanding of planets or astrology for that matter. It's instead simply indulging the mind in an intellectual discussion that may or may not assist you in making good decisions and living well. You'll be then so dependent on those who have skillfully disguised themselves as authorities on how planets will dictate your life. And many of them perhaps feel equally lost themselves. If you want to really understand astrology and planets, then please don't undermine the role of your connection with the divine, with your inner core. And don't underestimate the power of sadhana to aid you in this path. If you cannot actively participate in a spiritual practice to sharpen your intuition rather than the intellect, then you'll miss the point entirely of astrology. So yes, the planets are in strong positions for most of 2020, and yes, they are in dignified positions, and yes, they are in supportive positions. But remember, the essence of planets, especially well-placed malefics, is not to nurture your material life. Instead, it's to awaken the spiritual one. And our material life is, of course, essential as long as we're on this planet Earth, but not at the cost of the environment, of other living beings who share the planet with humans, and of course, Mother Nature. Yeah, that's all, folks. Cheers.